So that's the number one thing that I would say to a person that is looking to get started. Say yes. Even though it might be for free, you might not get paid in the beginning, but if you say yes, you might learn something new, you might make a connection, and you could possibly take that into something else moving forward. So say yes, why not? I mean, give yourself 6 months, and if it doesn't work, there you go.
Hello, I'm Tammy Honaman, a maker, digital content creator, someone who works in many different mediums with a true passion for helping others find their creative spark. I also really love to connect others who have something to share with those who want to learn. Welcome to Heart and Hands of a Maker, the creative journey. If you found us, chances are you're on a quest for creative inspiration. Maybe you're feeling stuck in an artistic rut, dreaming of turning your passion into a flourishing business, or maybe you're hoping to see your work in print or grow your online presence. Well, my friend, wherever you are on your creative journey, you're in the right place. Today, we're talking with Kerr, a mixed media artist and a licensed designer with over 80 products to her name. Kat works in many media and seems to have so much fun when she's at work. It really is work, but she makes it look like so much fun. We'll be discussing her creative journey, explore her business evolution, and dig deeper into her practice of mixed media art. It's time to grab your favorite beverage, settle into your creative space, and meet Kat. Kat, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Oh my gosh, I am excited. I don't want to make you feel like I'm a stalker, but I'm a big fan. So fangirling over here to think that I'm sitting here talking with you is a huge highlight in my life. So thank you for being here.
Thank you. I'm excited.
Well, great. Thank you for making the time. And thank you in advance for sharing, with our listeners a little bit about you, whatever it is that you wanted to share as far back as you want to go about how you got to where you are today. So please take it away.
Oh my goodness. Well, first I have to say that I'm so thankful for this opportunity because, I did mention this before, but this has given me the chance to really think about just the journey and, where I did start and every step along the way. And I think it's been really fun and interesting to think about it that way. But for people that don't know me, I'm a mixed media artist and I consider myself curiosity driven. So I am inspired by the materials that I hold in my hand, and I often let them lead the way. The process for me is always the journey. I love the process. It outweighs even the results, the outcome. And I just love learning about different products and different techniques and things like that. But as a young girl, I have to say, I've always been creative. I've always, loved to draw and things like that. But I have to say that as a young girl, I always wanted to become a fashion designer. It was one of my dreams to become a fashion designer. So during that time, you would always find me with a pad and a pen or a pencil, and I'd be drawing little designs. And I had a name and everything for my designs, and it was inspired by my grandmother, and her name is Belén de Carvajal, and that was the name of the designs that I drew at the time. So it was something that I thought was on my path, and of course it didn't turn out that way, but that's really where it started. And so, after that stage, I'd say maybe my mid-20s, I started taking that paper and really manipulating it and incorporating found objects and things that I could find with the paper. And so that was my medium of choice at the time. And my 30s, oh my gosh, my 30s, I was obsessed with resin. I was obsessed with metal. I was obsessed with rust. Combining all of those things, putting them together, figuring out what I could do with them. And my 40s, I moved on to wood and plastic. Absolutely love plastic, specifically plastic film. I work with a company called Graphics, and they have a huge line of plastic films, and there's so many wonderful creative things that you could do with this medium. And so now in my 50s,
I'm with you, sister.
Now in my 50s, I have to say that my world it revolves around color. I found my way to color, whether it's painting with acrylic paints or wax sticks or anything like that. I love, love, love color. And so I'm learning about color as well as learning how to combine all of the things that I learned with all of those other materials and how to put all of that together today in this stage that I'm in. And so, bottom line, if somebody was to ask me, what do you make? What do you create? I would say a little bit of everything because my work ranges from canvas work to metal work to assemblage to uh, art journaling. I mean, it goes from here to there, and I'm extremely happy about it.
Isn't that wonderful? And you've made a career out of it, and you've inspired so many others to do the same. And even those who aren't making this as their business, you've inspired so many to just create without abandon. With abandon? What's the right way to say it? No fear.
Yes. I hope so. I really do, because I think that that is, for me, what social media is. It's that opportunity to get people excited. It is, don't get me wrong, part of the business side of the art, but it's also the opportunity to share your excitement, to share why you like something. And that's what I hope that people get out of it, is that they do want to go out and try this technique or something like that. So I hope so. And I hope that's what they see when they come and visit me.
Oh, for sure. And I'm thankful. I have no idea how the algorithm works, and I think once I figure it out, it's going to change, so I don't even bother. But you are in my feed on a regular basis, and I love all that you're doing, and I love how you present it because it's so freeing. It's there's no rules, but there's structure. Like there's boundaries because of the products that you're putting in front of us, but the end result could be anything. And that comes through even in the short minute or whatever time frame it is that you're conveying this quick little snippet of what you're working on. And it's so, I don't know, I'm enthralled, and I just wish I had the space at that moment to just break out all the things and just do something. So
I have to pinch myself on a daily basis. I mean, it's been a journey, for sure. It's been a long, couple of years, but now being able to, play with so many different, products and things that, I mean, I've never met a medium I didn't like. And I think that that's part of the enthusiasm, is that I want to try it all. And what makes me so excited is figuring out something new other than what that product is intended for. I think that just floats my boat. I'm telling you, I just get so excited. I want to take that wax and I want to use it on the wall, or I want to find new ways of using these products so that it gives people, some new ideas.
Well, you certainly do that. You do it successfully, in my opinion, because I know it comes through to me. And I don't think I'm alone. I'm sure I'm not alone. And I love how you do it. And I love that you do it with the spirit of trying something new, pushing things to a different limit, different than what it's intended for. That it's inspiring, and it helps. If not with that product, it helps people realize, like, oh wait, I'm not going to use that, but let me try it with this, because this is what's in front of me right now. Like, that's the other thing, is you do it without fear. And I feel somebody recently was saying to me, like, oh, well, I don't even think about it as being brave because I'm not afraid. But I know from my listeners, from people who I've interacted with, a lot of us have a lot of fear, and we're afraid to fail. We're afraid to put ourselves out there. We're afraid to try things. We're afraid to break the rules. I'm a firstborn, I live by the rules, and so I'm like, wait, am I allowed to do that? Like, yeah, do it. So I'm constantly having to tell myself, you give that permission through your work. And that is a gift. And whether you intend to do that or not, it comes through.
I recently had to write up, just a little introduction for my website. This was a couple of months ago. And I wrote in the description creative mad scientist because that is exactly how I feel. I mean, I understand 1000% that this could be an epic fail, but that's okay. And I think that you have to go into it knowing, at least for me, I might damage a product here.
Mhm.
I might, and if I'm okay with that, I also, which I am, I know that it might lead to something new and something wonderful. So, creative mad scientist, I know there's no real thing like that, but that's how I feel. I feel like it's part of the process for me. And like I said, the outcome a lot of times that's the last thing on my mind.
Mhm.
So
So you don't start trying something with an end goal in mind necessarily.
yeah, not necessarily. I mean, it depends on the medium. So, for example, if I am working with metal, like if I'm, that's the one class that I probably taught the most was metalworking. And, that requires step by step by step. And there's not a lot of creative flow in that because you want to do it right and you want to do it safely, and so I think that you do have to take it step by step. But as I've continued to work with other mediums, it is about that flow. It is, depending on what I'm doing, but for the most part, yeah, I'm just playing. I'm letting go of whatever it's going to look like. And if it turns out nice, then yay. If it doesn't, I'm okay with that too. But there are certain mediums that I do have to follow certain guidelines and things like that.
Sure, sure. As a mixed media artist, the things that don't turn out well, do you save them because they may turn into something in the future?
1000.
It's not why you moved, but maybe it helped that you moved and have a different studio.
I'm getting a little bit better with weeding out things that I don't use on a regular basis. But as far as projects that don't work out, I'll give you an example. Just 2 days ago, I was working on a canvas, and oof, gosh, I was having a good old time. It was working out. Everything was looking great. And I did one wash over the entire piece, and it just ruined it for me. And so I said, you know what? It's time to walk away. I'm going to get even more frustrated if I continue working with this mindset. So I just put it away and I went on to something else. And last night I went back to it and I was able to salvage the piece. And I think that sometimes you need to walk away.
Mhm.
If you go back to it 1, 2, 3 times and it's still not working for you, then maybe it's time to move on.
You're out of here.
But talk about, supplies and things that we don't use and things like that. I'm getting onto this thing where if I don't use it like for 6 months, then, it's got to go. It's got to
Wow.
go because I just get so overwhelmed with so much stuff, and I like to visually see what I have
Mhm.
so that it can inspire and all of that. So if the space is cluttered, my brain is cluttered. And I try to minimize as much as I can by getting rid of the things that I don't use.
Yeah, that's
Whether it's
wise.
donating them to the schools or, there's a lot of older communities that also take art supplies, things like that. So,
Well, that's
yeah,
very generous of you too, and a good thought for any of us who are at a point where we need to purge to maybe make room for new.
yeah.
I'm definitely at that phase. I know I donated some things to just a family who were getting into making jewelry, and I'm like, oh, do I have some things for you? But schools are always in need, and they have
Yeah,
tighter budgets, and if they still have an art program, it's nice to be able to support. That's a great thought. So when it comes to space and organizing, I know that's something that is, I think it's always a hot topic. Everybody likes to know, and I know you and I've talked about maybe doing a studio tour at some point, but like
yeah.
what would be some of your recommendations, especially for some of these products that have a long shelf life? Like, how do you hold on to them, and how do you organize them, and how do you keep them around?
Ooh, wow. Everybody's different. Everybody works on different mediums and everything. I think for me personally, as a mixed media artist, I have to be organized in some way, which is, not something my husband would say because he knows I'm a slob. But when it comes to my art supplies, I do like to keep them pretty organized. And as I mentioned before, I like to see what I have. So even, for example, metal dies that I use for cutting, I don't keep them in the sleeves. I actually have magnetic walls that I just put
Brilliant.
them all up there, or at least the ones that I use on a regular basis. And so if I can see it, then I'm going to use it. But then there are other things. For example, wood, which I mentioned. I love wood, but I started collecting so much wood, little pieces of scrap wood here and there. And I ended up just with one large bin of wood, and that's it. Whatever's in the bin, I'm going to go with that. So depending on the medium, and I'm currently obsessed with foam.
Interesting.
Have you seen like my latest reel? I got a Ryobi foam cutter.
Oh, it popped up last night. Yes.
Oh my gosh.
I can't watch this because I can't take on more tools right now. Oh my gosh. What were you cutting? I did see the shape of it.
Yeah, so I mean it's a foam cutter, and somebody asked me exactly what kind of foams it cuts, and so I did a series of whatever foams I had on hand. But that's like my new thing. So of course I had to make a bin just for foam pieces. So it's trying to keep things as organized as possible. If I can see them, the better.
Yeah.
When I have a lot of supplies, for example, I have a large line of stencils, and I don't use them all at the same time. So the ones that I use on a regular basis, I'll actually keep in a folder right next to me. And I try to organize and minimize in that way.
That's great. And organizing by type, I think, also helps. It sounds like, so that when I need wood, I'm going to go to the wood bin. And and you bring up foam, and you're cutting foam with this great tool. We're not sure exactly where that's going to go, but it sounds exciting. But you also have new foam stamps out, which are fabulous. So did one inform the other, or completely separate?
No, I mean, completely separate.
Of course.
Completely separate. I've been working with, I actually have foam stamps with two different companies. The first one is joggles.com and the other one is artfoamies.com. And, there's just something about a larger stamp for me. I think there's more opportunity, to use them in different ways, whether it's on the wall or on your shirt, or, there's just a lot more opportunity with a foam stamp. And so I was so thankful when not only the foam companies, but, other companies that I have products with, when they're open to listening to product ideas. Both of these companies already had, they're already established. And so they already had they were already manufacturing these products. But, I think that that's definitely one of the key takeaways is that, you don't know unless you ask. And so when it comes to, product design and manufacturing products, if I see a product that I like, me personally, then I'm going to figure out how I can get myself in there and design, something like that. And that's how foam stamps started for me. I saw them. I knew they were, you could use them in multiple ways. And I knew that I wanted to start knocking. Hey!
Hello.
Like, my name is Kat. Are you interested? Blah, 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 So.
Well, and that's That brings up a completely different direction of conversation, and we don't have to go down this path, but it has come up, and traditional channels have changed. What do you find is different from how things used to be? And these different organizations that really set creatives on a path and a direct line of communication to manufacturers, and now things are a little different. I know we have NAMPTA. How have things evolved, and has that impacted you in any way?
I mean, for me personally, I don't think that it's changed the way that I approach things in any way. It always starts, like I said, if I see something that I find interesting, then, I don't have that line of communication right from the start.
Mm.
So I have to do some homework, so I have to go onto that website, figure out that contact, fill out that contact form and say, is this the person that I talked to regarding this? Or if not, who can I speak to? I'll go to their social media page and I'll send them a message on social media. So my access has always pretty much been the same. I'm there trying to find out, who that connection is going to be. And once I have that connection, starting that line of dialogue. The trade shows are so, so important because you're right. They're definitely a way of that, having that face-to-face conversation, but that's never been my primary source of reaching out to people. No.
Okay.
I mean, I've made a lot of connections through them, but, today, if I see something that interests me, I'll start figuring things out and figuring out who I can talk to. And, I think that's why ultimately making connections is so important, because even if I don't have a direct line to that one particular company, I can ask so-and-so, hey, do you know anybody over here? Or do you know anybody over here? Because you got to be willing to do that.
Yeah. Okay.
So,
that's cool. That's really great. That's great to hear.
Don't be, I mean, and I do get these questions like, especially about, like you said, reaching out to companies, and I'm like, you gotta get in there. You gotta get in there, and they'll probably say no. I forgot to mention that. They'll probably say no. But you know what? That's part of the process. I mean, it's going to depend on, your, determination. If you really want to find that particular product, then you go to another company or something like that. But, a lot of them will say no, and that's okay. That's also just part of it. But the ones that say yes, they can lead to something beautiful.
Well, that's great advice. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for being so open to answering that.
Yeah, of course.
Earlier when we were talking, one of the thoughts that came to mind was, you can go down the path and spend hours and hours and hours on a canvas that then all of a sudden doesn't work out. How do you, and it doesn't have to be how you do it, but if you were me, or you were an artist who's really trying to make a business out of this, how do you approach that from the perspective of what the value of that finished piece is once you actually do make one that does work? Or if you're working for a company and you're designing for them, and your 3 days worth of work, you have to start over, yet you still have to deliver on time. Like, how do you navigate that as a businesswoman in a creative space where you're still experimenting or trying something new, and maybe it does or doesn't work? Like, what are your recommendations there on?
This is going to be an interesting answer, because I don't sell anything I make.
Yeah. Okay.
And over the years, if I do sell something, don't get me wrong. In the beginning, I sold little things like, cards or things like that. I've sold my jewelry at trade shows. But I don't have a website where I actually sell pieces that I create, unless it's to a manufacturer that wants to use them as samples.
Okay.
Okay. So it's tough for me to answer that, because the way I think about it is not so much the piece itself, but I think about my time. How much do I want to get paid an hour? How much do I want for that? And then I start with that. And that's how most of my work my work revolves around that because I don't actually sell my art. I, make royalties on products and I get paid for my time. So that's why it's kind of tough. But this year I am thinking about selling some of my paintings because I'm getting more and more into painting, and trying to figure out. Oh my gosh, trying to figure out, like you said, what would you be selling? What would I sell my pieces for? I have to start with the amount of time that I invested in it, and gosh, yeah, it's so tough.
It is tough. It is tough.
It is because I don't normally think in that way.
Sure. No, that's okay. That's fair. That's fair.
So,
No, that's fair. That's fair.
what do you mean you don't sell your art?
I'm like, well, how big is your house if you don't sell your art? Answer that.
The other thing, because I if you look at my social media, you'll see it's just me creating nonstop samples here and there. And you're right. I do end up with a lot of stuff, but over the years, I've sold it to, the manufacturers that are using them for samples and things like that. But I do end up with a lot of stuff.
Yes. Like, I know just from teaching, my jewelry stash is huge. Whether or not some of those pieces are saleable is a whole nother story. But at some point, either it's all going to just be put out at a yard sale when I'm no longer on this earth, or like I should do something with it. It's like, where do you start? It's a lot. And I know the other side of that coin is there's a lot of people who are trying to get into this space and understand how to navigate back. If you and I dialed back 30 years ago, like, you'd spent a lot of money on the paint and the canvas and the brushes, and you carved out 2 hours of your day to finally, the kids are asleep, you don't have any more household responsibilities, I'm going to make something. And in that time frame, you want to make something that you then has value, so you can justify the time that you and the investment. And for some people, it's just about making. But in this economy, and similar to probably where we were 25, 30 years ago, you have some value in your time that you want to be proud and sell that piece. It's tricky.
And I think that's why, it's been such a journey, because you're right. You do start off with that mindset. You want to have something to show for that. And, for me, it's taken many years, and I still struggle with that, what are you worth? How much do you want to get paid an hour? Things like that. But I learned very quickly on that in the beginning, when I was trying to sell, it just was not enough to justify the amount of time that I was putting in. I wasn't selling, it was little cards, or I can't even remember, little assemblages. And I just felt like it just wasn't for me. I tried a local, craft show, where you go and set up a booth and everything. I did that once, no more. It just was not enough. It was not enough interaction. It was not, even if you sold one or two little pieces, for the amount of time that you put into that, building that, it didn't make sense for me. And so I think that's why, me personally, I started online so early, because it just felt like that's how you reach the masses. That's how you start making those connections, and figuring out, if I can't make money selling my art, I'll sell the supplies that make the art.
Sure.
So it's transitioning and pivoting, and, figuring out what works and what doesn't work. But it's all important information. It's all figuring that stuff out. And I think that, you're right. It's, I talked to a few artists that they do tons of shows, and all the time and the effort that they put into that. And I just feel like, that's a lot. Is it worth it? I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
Well, and then there's the people who make just to make, and right. I think that, I know during conversations with people during the pandemic, making was just a way of finding some peace. Sure. And I'm sure that existed well before, and it will exist long after, but I think it's something that people, or maybe my awareness is heightened, and that understanding that art really does help heal, and it brings such grounding and meaningfulness into our lives. Like, do you experience that with your interaction with people, especially when you're teaching?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that 1000%. I think it's the place where you go, and you let go of all of those insecurities. And I'm referring specifically to the process,
Mm.
because it's in that process that, I don't compare myself to other people, and I don't think that I'm good enough or anything like that. But once the piece is done, then you start thinking about, like, oh, maybe that's not so good. But yeah, I think that ultimately it's just, for me, art is that the one area in my life where I feel sure. I
Mm.
feel like, I have a good eye, and I'm going to stick with that. Other areas of my life, yeah, you have those insecurities, things like that. But, it's your little haven, your little space where you can go and, create something. And over the years, I've learned to let go of that, you know, wanting it to be perfect all the time, wanting it to be step after step after step, and ending up with something absolutely wonderful. And that's just not the case. So it's you do it for the joy, you do it for I love it. I'm thankful I get to do it. And with that said, it doesn't mean that I don't want to get paid for my time,
Of
because
course.
there's the two sides of that. There's that creative side, that freeing, liberating, moment. But if you're working with someone, you want to get paid for your time. So it's like finding that balance of the two. And which can be a little tricky for sure.
Yeah. And I think that's the same in any relationship. I just feel sometimes in our space, the people that you're sometimes negotiating with for the value of your time, they don't get it.
Sure.
And because you're having fun and because you love it and you're portraying this, amazing Zen like being during the process, they're like, oh, well, then why should I pay you? And it's
Then you keep looking.
yeah, yeah, no,
You
that's
keep
great
looking.
advice. That's so great. So
Hmm.
great,
Yeah.
so great to say that.
I my situation is a little bit different in the sense that, I don't live off the money that I make in my creative life. So that right there is different.
Hmm.
But that doesn't mean that I don't want to be paid for my time. And the goal is figuring out how much you want to get paid and then sticking to that. And if you find companies that just are, there's a very small handful of them that are open to listening and that understand that value, you gotta get in there, and you gotta keep searching, because there are some out there, not a lot, I know. But there are definitely some, and there have been some companies that I've worked with over the years that, I mean, I'm going on 4, 5, 6 years that I've worked with the same companies, because they understand that value. There's excellent communication, which is the number one thing that I look for when it comes to working with a company. I want to have that communication. I want to make sure we're all on the same page. And that's really important to me. You have to figure out what's important to you when you're looking for to work with a company. But if they're not willing to pay you what you want, then you know you always leave the door open. Thank you so much. It's been great working with you. And I'll reach back. But you have to first make the decision, figure out what you want to get paid, and then stick with it, because you're right, the tricky part is that it is fun.
Yeah,
Yeah. And so it's really tricky, because you're like, how can I get paid for having fun and playing with products that they send me?
right. Yeah.
But you got to put that aside. You got to put that aside, you know?
Yep.
So, I'm gonna share one other thing, and I actually took it off my wall, and I want to read this to you really quickly,
Okay.
because over the years, I've worked with quite a few companies. And like I said, some of them have had these just lasting impacts on me, the people that I've connected with. And one of the companies that I worked with was called Alumilite.
Oh,
It's a
sure.
resin company. And at the time, the president, his name was Mike, and I met him at one of the trade shows. They asked me to come and demo at one of the trade shows. And so I met him a couple of times, and it was just great chatting with him, nothing crazy. And soon after one of the trade shows, he sent me an email. And this email, I'm not going to lie, it changed my life. He was very specific on what he thought I should be doing in order to achieve the goals that I expressed to him. And it was, at first I was so taken back by the email. This was back in 2017. Okay. I was taken back by this email. I was like, wow, I only talked to him for a few minutes. I didn't think I made that much of an impression. But he took the time to write me this email. And he was so generous in his advice. And there were so many bits in here that I still use today.
Wow.
And I wanted to share this with you because I'm not going to read the whole thing. I'm just going to read just a small section of it.
Sure.
But it basically tells me to focus. You just have to focus on what you want, and you have to clarify what you want, and you have to define what you want. And then you can't stray. Because if you know what you want, right, you see it down the road. If you start working with a company that kind of takes you in this direction, then you're never going to get to that final destination, right? And so his name was Mike. He was the president at the time of Alumilite. And he said, I know you're not asking for it, but I wanted to share some thoughts with you. And he goes on to talk about, achieving the goals that we had discussed and that I expressed to him that I wanted to do. And so he said, my suggestion is this. First, go out and talk to as many people as you can think of that have made it in the industry. Ask them what they've learned, how they started, and how they got where they were today. Talk to as many people and learn from as many people as you can and from their experiences. While you're doing that, as it will take the next 6 months, because he actually put a timeline in this email for me. Let me tell you, it worked.
Wow.
He put the timeline. He said, this is how long it should take you to do this and how long it should take you to do this. And if you're focused, this is what it should look like. And I don't know if you can see, but it's a very long email. It's very long. But so he said, while you're doing that, I want you to also create a bottom box. A bottom box is something that will define what Kat Kerr will look like once she's established. And he goes on to include every little detail about that bottom box. How many hours of the week you're going to dedicate to your goal or your end result? How much money you want to make per hour? The companies that you want to work with, the products that you want to have. And he just continued to list and list. And he says, I'm not saying set goals. I'm saying define exactly what you will be doing, how long it will take, and what type of people you will need in order to get there, where they are, and what they do. My last suggestion is to partner with people that get you. They're there to help you and support you, and they're there and you're there for them. Most of my relationships in business are with people that I consider friends, if not family. It makes working together so much nicer and knowing people have your back. And that is just a small part of the letter that he wrote me. I printed it up when he sent it to me. It's been in my office ever since because he was so generous and gave me so much helpful advice that I wanted to share it as well, because it all comes down to focus. It all comes down to you defining what you want and seeing it at the end and taking the steps to get there. So I had to share it with you.
Thank you so much. That's such a gift. It was such a gift from him to you and from you to us. Thank you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you.
Aw.
Thank you.
And since Mike, there have been so many others that have continued to believe in what I do and believe in my capabilities and things like that, that have recommended me for other jobs and things like that. And I think that is just so important, making those connections, being professional. Companies want to work with somebody that says they're going to do something and they do it. So I think that all of that is so important, and those connections, they almost always lead to something wonderful.
Yeah. Wow. Very good advice. Very good advice. And it's worked well for you.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I said, I started off, it's been such a blessing, and being able to create and have fun, but also acknowledging that there is a business side to it, and so you have to be disciplined and work that side of it as well. But I think that it's if it's what you want to do, absolutely, it's always possible.
Anything's possible. But having that focus is it is key. It really is key. And there's so many distractions, and there's so many things we get in our own way.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. 1000%. But you know what, if you have that vision again, of what you want to achieve, at one point in the email, he said, I want it, you should be breaking it down to, what you should be doing on Monday, Tuesday, whatever. If that's what helps you to stay focused, then do it. And I'm not to that degree, but I definitely like to keep a schedule. I definitely like to plan. Some of the companies that I work with laugh because I schedule a year in advance. It is what it is. It keeps me organized, and it also allows me enough time to play. Because I know it sounds silly, but you do have to schedule play in order to balance all of it. And it's just a part of it, I think.
It is a part of it. It's like you figured out the secret sauce.
I wouldn't say that.
No, well, you've got a lot of it. You've got a lot of the recipe right there.
It's, I figured I would share some of it because it just really, it made such an impact. And, right now I have, I'm also an ambassador for Royal Talons. And one of the ladies there, her name is Mary Ruck, and she I've worked with her for years in different capacities. And one of the things that they announced at the trade show this year was that Royal Talons was going to be in collaboration with Sizzix. And so that was such a huge deal because Mary put my name in the hat for that collaboration. And it was just such an honor, when you work with these people and they believe in what you do. And there's really no greater feeling, it's really, really awesome when they can say, Kat would be good for this, or, they believe in that. So I think it's it's a blessing.
Well, and it's an honor that you've earned through all of your steadfast abilities and your planning and your communication and your professionalism and all those great skills that you've carried with you your whole career.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, and then you continue to share and inspire everybody. So you really, I don't mean to mean those of us who are a little less organized, or those of us who are artists and we get that moniker because we're like scattered. And, I think it's funny when you say they laughed when you plan a year out. It's just not a normal function of people who are creative. They see creative people. They're like, oh gosh, she has no clue.
Right.
And you have to work really hard to prove that, no, actually I do have, and you've really laid the foundation for people to understand, like, oh, it is possible for me to work with somebody who's communicative, professional, on time, respects deadlines, respects,
Mhm.
like you've done a lot for the industry. You've done a lot for your creative partners, your peers. And then you also inspire people to make things. You do so much. You don't even see it, do you?
I mean, it's, when we talk about like the business side of it, I feel like it's not one business. It's so
Yeah,
many
sure.
different things that you have to do in order to run smoothly.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's the teaching side of it or the articles. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
gosh, the articles were such a huge thing in my journey, and but all of that feeds the other. Everything feeds the other, and I think that it is important to have a little bit of everything. um, but with that said, I also, I mentioned this in the beginning, I'm a slob, I'm a mess. you know but it's just a matter of having a foundation of something that will kind of bring me back to the task. And it doesn't have to be, so elaborate and spelled out like second for second, but just having something to focus on, I think is good, depending on if that's what you want to do. If you do want to, be leave your day job. I left the day job in 2013, and I felt like that was a huge, scary step.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but I think if that's what you want to do, then you have to figure out what works and what doesn't work, and and make it happen.
Just do it.
You know?
Just do it.
Do
And if
it.
that doesn't work, don't feel defeated. Try the next
No,
thing.
not at all.
If
That's
somebody says no, call the next person.
I definitely feel like the failures are just as important because they help to redirect,
Mm-hmm.
and I hear no a lot. But that's okay. I'm okay with hearing no because it just wasn't meant to be,
Mm-hmm.
So I'm okay with the no, and um, you know, th- I'll just keep chugging along until I find something. And I've been really blessed where now I have like a core group of companies that I work with, and there's great communication, but but there's always no's, and that's okay. You just gotta pivot a little bit, but it's all good. It's all good.
It's wonderful. So what do you have going on? Like, so you're working, you have your foam stamps, you have your ambassador programs. Like, what is it that you want to share that you're doing, and where can people find you, or what would you like people to be looking forward to knowing is coming up?
I mean, I mentioned earlier about the collaboration with Sizzix and Royal Talons, and that's really huge. That's probably the biggest thing going on in my world right now. Those products are going to be hitting the shelves in October, and so that's really exciting. But ultimately, I think it's, following my social media, I think is huge because that is where I play and where I share the things that I'm excited about. And, I'll always, I always end up using, whether it's my stencils. I have a lot of stencils with Stencil Girl products. And, that's also an exciting part of it. But yeah, I'm always playing on my social media and sharing whatever is coming up next on there. So,
Okay.
so I would say if you don't follow me on social media, especially Instagram, that's pretty much where I am all the time. And I try to keep that consistent. And so I share whatever else is coming up, on there.
Cool. Cool. Well, and I would love to have you back to get into yeah, because there's like a whole
What?
other
Oh my gosh.
no, no, there's like a whole other hour we could do here. Um, but I respect your time.
Mhm.
But I think there's so many things that I think people would love to know about those types of things. Like, how are you
Sure.
handling your Instagram? What are you using for that? And, your setup and really, so we'll have to schedule another time because there's so many things that you do that are so inspiring that go beyond your artwork and
Mhm.
go beyond the materials you're doing. You really have, you've got it all going on.
Not at all. It's a constant journey of learning, but that's also the exciting part. something new that is happening this year, which is not really creative. However, I am working with one of the companies that I mentioned graphics earlier. I've worked with them for years, and this year I was casually talking to the president of the company over there, and we're good friends, and we're just chatting or whatever. And she's like, "Yeah, I lost my my coordinator again." And I was like, well, what is it? What does that involve? And so she told me, and she's like, are you interested? And I thought, well, I'm not really looking for any more work. But she, she was very generous and said, you can work on your time frame and things like that. And I decided to take the position because it was learning something new. It was learning a different side of that company, of the creative world that I wasn't familiar with. And so I'm actually doing that. I work a couple of hours a day, but it's a different side of everything else that I do. And I'm really enjoying it. So it's kind of funny how things work out. Again, connections.
Yep.
Because I wasn't looking for this job, and we were just casually chatting, and it just came up, and she said, well, if you want to try. Again, she believed in my capabilities, even though I've never done anything like this. I was laughing yesterday because I said, these Excel sheets are just brutal. But I'm figuring it out, and I'm enjoying it because it's a different side of the industry. So, I mean, I'm open. That's the number one thing that I would say to a person that is looking to get started. Say yes, even though it might be for free. You might not get paid in the beginning. But if you say yes, you might learn something new, you might make a connection, and you can possibly take that into something else moving forward. So say yes, why not? I mean, give yourself 6 months, and if it doesn't work, there you go.
Fabulous. No, I mean, another slice of gold. You're killing me, Smalls.
Oh my gosh.
We can just keep going. You're like a wealth of, you're like a walking billboard. Every one is gold. Every piece of advice is just amazing.
Oh, I'm thankful to just have this chat with you. And like I said, I really started thinking about it when we both chatted about this, and I just felt like, my goodness, it's been a journey for sure. And I think that we're all on that same journey. It's just a matter of being at different stages. And it's so important to help other artists, and so important to share what you can to help. I mean, I'm always recommending other artists for other things because we're all on that same road. I think it's important to support one another, to be kind. All those little silly things to some people, but they mean the world when somebody says something kind about you or your art. And so I think that's really, really important to help other artists out there for sure.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. I truly do. It makes a difference. And if people think they're silly, then they're not part of my circle, because you got to be nice. You got to be kind.
Absolutely.
We're all just here for a short amount of time, and there's no reason not to be nice to everybody.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
In a blink. In a blink. All right. Well, my friend, thank you so much for your time, and thank you to all of you for tuning in. It has been a wonderful, wonderful time, and you have shared so much value to me, and I know to others. Kat, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's been my true pleasure. All right. Well, so that's a wrap on another episode of Heart and Hands of a Maker. It's been so wonderful sharing this time with you and with Kat. Thank you for tuning in. And if you want more, be sure to head over to tamarahonaman.com/podcast for today's show notes and all of the links and information, so we can make it easy for you to find Kat if you're not already following. And to be sure you never miss an episode, follow Heart and Hands of a Maker on your favorite podcast platform.